but yet there's a reason for it and a method to the madness. So I started working on realizing that we had to make money. As a tech, I had to make money. I mean, people had to buy from me for me to be able to feed my children.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan. We are live at the 2024 New Flat Rates Business Uncensored event down in lovely Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're pleased to have Matt Koop on the show. We'll talk a little bit more about him, but first, a word from our sponsors.
But of course, today's episode would not be possible without our lovely sponsors, and in no particular order, we have On Purpose Media, Elite Call, Chirp, and Free to Go. Have you ever thought about outbounding your databases to fill your dispatch boards with lucrative service and sales appointments and boosting memberships too? Well, enter in Elite Call, a US-based call center that does just that. For over 20 years, their dedicated teams don't just make calls, they directly integrate appointments into your CRM and fill your dispatch board. So don't let your competition get ahead. Let Elite Call connect with your customers first. Visit elitecall.net to learn more. Well, if you ever wanted to transform your home service business with Chirp, you can, because they are the ultimate automation toolbox. It helps you capture more leads, connect instantly, and that speed to lead things big, and skyrocket your sales. It integrates directly into platforms like ServiceTitan and House Call Pro. It offers unlimited or automated text messages, rather. I'm sure unlimited, but you got to pay for it. So offering automated texts, emails, and even ringless voicemails. You boost your Google reviews too, and also increase customer loyalty with their proven rehash programs. Getting jobs on the board in the shoulder season, important. Schedule your demo with them today and get an exclusive 25% off your first 3 months. Visit them at chirp.com/HSSR.
Enhance your online presence with On Purpose Media, your go-to home service marketing experts for everything web design, SEO, and PPC. They build stunning user-friendly websites built to convert visitors into phone calls. They'll enhance your visibility on Google with effective pay-per-click ads, minimizing wasted ad spend. Let's turn your online presence into a lead-generating powerhouse. Visit onpurposemedia.ca to start your digital transformation today.
Wouldn't it be nice to know what's happening on every single call that comes into your business? Or to identify that one objection that CSRs are constantly struggling with? Enter Lace AI, your call center revenue intelligence platform. With Lace analyzes 100% of the calls that come into your business. And using AI is able to identify the revenue blockers that are happening in your call center and provide you with the tools to overcome them. This is going to give your managers so much more time back to be able to fully optimize and work with your team and your individual CSRs to fully optimize your call center and make sure you are booking as many calls as possible. So if this sounds like something that's interesting to you, go to lace.ai/demo to book your demo today.
Matt is the VP of the New Flat Rate. He's heads up the training and the implementation department and responsible for all the content they put out. I'm really excited to dive into his journey in terms of how they came up with the New Flat Rate and what it meant for their business, because they were struggling to grow when they had their business, and they started doing this one thing, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to be looking forward to that part of today's conversation. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Thaddeus.
Perfect. Well, let's just dive right into it. You guys were at a point where you guys were struggling to grow your company, but then you did something.
Yeah, our issue that we had going on is we ran a home service business, so heating, air, electric, and plumbing. And the issue that we were running into was that we're in an industry that's always said, if you're going to be successful and you're going to make money, you've got to train all your people to be salespeople. And it's kind of like we had one of two things that kept happening. We either had, techs that would go out and just refuse to sell anything, so they would burn leads and it would cost us a ton of money and we weren't making any. Or we had techs that were good at selling and they would close some deals, but in usually only a year or two, they would just leave and start their own companies even, because they were just naturals at it, right? And so over time, we went through all these different programs and things, and we started working in the world of options and really giving options to our customers. And so I got to a place where I started just writing options. And I remember one day, kind of a funny story, if I can share, where I wrote up some options for the customer. I went in and showed them to them, and they got so incredibly mad. And it was the only call in the history of me working as a service technician that a customer physically touched me. They were so mad. And he grabbed me by the shirt, he dragged me to his door, and he pushed me out the front door and said some very, very choice words and scared the living crap out of me. Because I'm not the tallest guy, and all of a sudden I thought that this guy was just about to kick my ass. And I didn't really understand it. And the reason I didn't understand it is because, Evan, I was just there to help him. You know, like I was a service tech, man. I like to fix things. I like to help people. I like to be the hero. And then this guy got pissed off because I was telling him that it was going to cost him money. And, you know, that was really the turning point for me. That day I realized something that I heard before, and you've heard it too. You know what it is?
What's that?
The number one rule of sales says that people hate it when you try to what? When you try to sell them something. People hate it. And I realized that even though at the time I was giving him some options, which was good for some people, the options that I wrote for him just didn't work. And there were some pieces missing in the process. So that day I made a change, and I stopped studying sales. I said, you know what? People hate it when you try to sell them something, but yet when they go to the stores, they go to the Walmarts and the Home Depots and the big box stores, how many times have you even went into one of those stores and you actually bought more than you went in there for?
Every time you go to Costco.
Right? Costco's the worst for it.
Yeah.
People like to buy.
They like to buy, but yet there's a reason for it and a method to the madness. So I started working on realizing that we had to make money. As a tech, I had to make money. I mean, people had to buy from me for me to be able to feed my children. And so I started adjusting how the options I was putting for them were. And I started focusing on things like, I refer to them as algorithms because our software builds that way. But I started focusing on things like the difference in price between options, and realized that if my price points between my bottom option and my next options were too big, then people couldn't acquire them. Right. But I learned something else too along the way. I learned that, you know, there's a lot of people in the world that will never be able to walk onto a car lot, like a new car lot, and buy a brand new car that's fully loaded with 0 miles. Did you know that?
I can see it. Well, I mean, over half the population is $500 away from not being able or couldn't afford like a $500 emergency.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so, but when I saw that, I realized that there was a problem, that they'll never be able to experience the joy of buying the best. And so when I started working and adjusting my pitch, I guess, I wanted my top option to be something that was not only my best, but something that they could actually acquire as well. And when I did that, I realized I didn't always have to have a $5,000 top option in repairs like I had been taught by the sales companies, a $5,000 top option in order to actually still make money and in order for the customer to want to buy it. And so I started having premium options that were just targeted. And they were saying, hey, we're working in this area. Let's say under the sink. How can I do just my best work just under the sink? And that doesn't really necessarily cost that much money. It's just a little bit more time, because as a trade professional, I did one thing better than anything else, and that was turn wrenches. So if I was only changing one part, or they said change every part under the sink, it didn't necessarily take me longer. It just was a little bit more money. So I started building options like that and changed how I communicated in them, changed the words that I used, stopped using things like part names that I learned was just a trip up for customers. Because when I tell a customer, hey, you need a capacitor, you know what 98% of the home service industry's customers have in common when you use that word? They don't know what it is.
They have no idea what it is, so then they go and Google it and find out it's $20 or $30 to replace it.
Well, that's exactly right, Evan. They Google it, but why? They Googled it because they felt too stupid.
Right, they were confused.
To have the conversation with us. Yeah. And so people look at me and they're like, oh, Matt, that's the guy who changed all the part names. Actually didn't. I just stopped using them. Right. And we realized that if instead I would go in and just not even use part names and talk about things in systems, I started building simple packages that consumers understood because they were all directed to just the value of what we were doing. Like, hey, my top option is a full sink rebuild. Who doesn't understand that?
Right.
You know? And so it takes care of all my concerns. And the customers wanted it. So anyway, that's kind of the beginning of where it.
Well, and it's interesting because you're saying that at the time when you started doing that, your average ticket was 10 times the industry average.
That's true. So almost 10 times that. At the time, the industry average for our trades was about $230. Yeah. And when I started making these adjustments, and I was actually handwriting options on the job and writing 3 to 6 options on every job I was on, my average ticket actually went to right around $1,750.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Don't have to run very many calls a day to make money at that.
No, definitely.
No.
And it's a simple reframing, right? Like it's just trying to translate what it is that makes sense for a customer and helping them understand it. With the pricing models that you did, because I'm curious, how many options would you present on average?
Yeah, so we had been trained a lot of different things. We'd been through different training programs and stuff that, some of us wanted to, in the world of sales, that is, some of them had wanted us to just write everything on a page and then, total it up at the bottom and, hey, this is everything, this is my best. But that kind of scared a lot of people. And then we worked with some other ones that said, no, package your things, but focused more on like accessories and ancillary type of add-on products. And we learned that add-ons push people back. And so over the years, we've practiced with really lots. We had 2 options, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 even. And we learned that for those of you that are maybe thinking, hey, I can write my own options, that's great. I learned 6 and 7 options. The problem is the top option becomes unbelievably premium to most consumers. It's like you're pulling BS out of the sky at one point. Like you can only do so much extra when you're working under the sink, right? And so it was really stretching. And so I saw a certain number of customers that would push real hard on it. And then if you're writing on paper, it's hard to fit 6 and 7 options on the page to be straight to. So you had that piece of now we were having to flip and it's a little uncomfortable. So over the years, we actually settled on 5. And we found some kind of data to back it that I was working with another coach, and he was talking about this data about the psychology of how people make decisions. And the psychology of when they're looking at options and you deliver them options, let's just say 3 options, because everybody's thinking good, better, best, right?
Yep.
And the 3 options would say, hey, when you give somebody 3 options, how many options do they actually notice? And the psychology says that when you're presented 3 options that apply to something that interests you or that you need, that the human mind instantly eliminates 2 options.
Right.
And so just instantly takes it away. And people think, well, okay, well, if I give good, better, best, they think, well, if I give good, better, best, then that just leaves the option for the customer to take. But what they don't understand, that is that one option is not options.
Right. No.
One option for the customer is take it or leave it.
Yep.
And so we actually found that people could make decisions faster and actually purchase more when there was 5. Because when there were 5, they eliminate 2,
Yep.
and they're still good,
3.
better, best.
Yep.
And so they can quickly say, well, do I want the top? Do I want the bottom? Do I want the one in the middle?
Yep.
And when we started going to 5 instead of the 3, 6, or 7, our average decision-making time from a customer went to an average of 10 seconds or less.
Wow.
Before they said, do that one.
Well, and what was do you have any data on the increase in tickets when you went from 3 to 5?
Yes. Hard for me to remember that back far.
Anecdotal at best. We're not going to hold you to those stats.
If we do the best, we typically saw at least, like the number we've kind of always seen anytime we had made an adjustment is about a 40% improvement.
Wow.
So like we saw that, we saw an improvement like that when we went to the 5, but we saw an improvement like that when we actually focused on what we called our bottom option also. So like our bottom option, we actually started calling a Band-Aid. And the reason for it is when you think of a Band-Aid, what do consumers hear?
Yeah, well, it's going to fix it temporarily.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be, it's going to break again. Yep. And if it's going to break again, now they realize and actually understand that they're just buying time. So is that okay? Well, yeah, it's okay. But you got to understand that. But when we used words like basic on the bottom one, we saw 40% more people would take a basic over a Band-Aid because basic still take care of their problem, they think. Oh, just do the basic, it's fine. But do the Band-Aid, they got to be like, well, I don't know about that.
Yep. Words matter, funny enough.
It does.
Yep.
And so anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
No, it definitely does. Well, and again, it just goes back to that power of choice, right? You said 3. Well, they see 1. You give 5. Well, they see 3. So you're still there, right? But then also the words on top of that. So I guess if you call it a Band-Aid, what are the other 4? Or is it kind of nuanced between?
Are you giving away the secret sauce here?
The secret sauce? We don't want to say.
No, it's not, because I mean we're just trying to help people here, and ultimately, for those of you watching, there's a lot of things you can do yourself. You can write your own options. You can. And so, we'll talk a little bit about what I do. And so, but I encourage you, hey, if you've never written options before, try it. But the issue that we found in writing options, first of all, was time. To do it really well, it takes a lot of time. So typically you would go back to your truck, 20, 30, 40 minutes even, just to put together the 5 options. And now, half your day is gone just in the truck, and it just wastes time. And so to answer your question, we tested a lot. We tested different types of metals. We tested naming them after things the customers had, all kinds of stuff. And we actually landed on something that is already very, very consistent in the world of options and choices, which is we actually use the names platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and Band-Aid. And the reason we did that, and I see on these chat boards all the time, not to derail too far, but I see on these chat boards, managers saying, hey, I want to rename our packages and get away from the traditional platinum, silver, gold and go to something else. And something little more new. And the thing is I just cringe when I see that. And the reason I cringe about it, Evan, is because they don't realize they're doing something that they're going to have to actually retrain their entire customer base to understand value. Like, what am I going to call it? The Evan package? Well, I know Evan's pretty awesome because I met you just now, right? But at the end of the day, does a consumer actually understand that? And it's a no. And so, but when I say...
They don't attribute any value to that word.
Right, because there's no history behind it for them. But when you use terms like platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and Band-Aid, just thinking through it, where do they know the terms platinum, gold, or gold, silver, bronze from?
The Olympics.
The Olympics.
Well, any sport, I shouldn't say any sport, but a lot of sports.
Most sports. So since they were little, they've known that the gold medal is good, right? But also, once they started learning about precious metals and bought jewelry and things like that, they started hearing about platinum is even better, right? But then you go to things like a car wash. You ever seen like gold, silver, bronze at a car wash?
Yep.
Why? Because people understand it. And so the simple answer is you can label options whatever you want. But the question is what does the customer understand in terms of value?
Right.
Because if you're putting something out there that they don't understand the value, or it just means something to you, it just doesn't work.
No, it makes a lot of sense. In terms of the percentages of pricing differences, because I've heard this get talked about before, where if you make that middle tier one, or the not the top tier, but the one right below it, really similar in price to that one, more people will go to the top tier one because they see more value in it. They're like, I'm getting so much more and the price isn't that much different. What's kind of the psychology around your structure of the pricing between the 5 options?
So we have, not to give away our secret sauce, but also not to sound greedy. When we were starting, we set out on a mission to really test that. And so we consistently pushed it according to how many people said no. So like we would raise it. Like if we went out and ran it for a couple weeks and everybody was buying premium options, or the majority were buying premium options, we would raise the premium options by $200. And we pushed and kept raising until we kind of found that sweet spot where we could have a consistent flow. And my goal is ultimately for any company that uses a 5-option price system, we really shoot for about 20% in each category. Like I want, about 20%. Now, I've got superstar techs out there that are closing, 40, 50% platinums. They're just awesome salespeople. But just if your packages are built right and spread right, just the packages themselves, we really see that you should be getting about 20% in each category. So as far as that price difference there, we have about 7 to 10 what we call algorithms. And we've learned that push for how far we could go was different in different situations. So, for example, in heating and air conditioning, when we're talking about a whole air conditioning system replacement that could be tens of thousands of dollars, the difference between the top two options could be thousands of dollars. I mean, it could be $5,000, $6,000 even. When we're talking about a repair on somebody's toilet, probably needs to be, $200, $300 at the most. Because then when we're in that couple $100 range, you're absolutely right. What I noticed as a service tech is I only ran about 5% golds, because almost everybody that was looking at the gold, they just said, well, shoot, just do the platinum.
Right. Makes sense. No. Yeah, that's some fascinating stuff. And especially, I love the part that you guys are test, and then look at the data, test and look at the data, test and look at the data. And there's still things that always need continual improvement. So where you guys have come from, the new flat rate and having the option pricing from that, what's next for you guys? What's on the next horizon? What are you guys seeing come down the line next?
The big thing right now, not to spill candy, is really ways to automate for really faster training. We really need to automate, and not only training for like service techs using our products and other ones. It's really just automation for speed. So for example, if we go backwards in time in the world of like sales and communication, almost everybody's heard a name called Zig Ziglar. And the thing is Zig Ziglar was considered to be one of the world's greatest door-to-door salesmen. But yet his program was built off of his success, in like the 50s and 60s, right? And so back then, his program was he would knock on your door, and if you answered the door, he would kind of take you through these like 16 steps, whatever they were. But he would spend an average of like an hour and a half just talking to people. And the problem that we ran into today is not that the sales practices that Zig Ziglar teaches or taught, he passed away, but that he taught weren't great. They are. It's the fact that the attention spans are too short. Right. Like how many of us have customers that really want to sit and talk to a service technician for an hour and a half, or a salesperson? They don't. And so what we're working on kind of coming down the pipeline are ways to streamline and make the conversation even faster. So like our total customer communication right now for an average service repair job, it doesn't have to be more than 5 minutes. It can be if the customer wants it to be, but it doesn't have to be. And even cases where we only have about 2 minutes of conversation, but yet we're still closing tickets that are 3 and 4 times the industry average. Wow. With all of our members.
Well, and it's it's a product of our time, of what we live in, really. I mean, it's that need for speed. They want things now. They want it instantly, and that instant gratification. And so, playing into what society is happening, and obviously the psychology behind that, makes a ton of sense. So, I guess from the new flat rate, I guess where can people find you guys if they want more information?
Yeah, so first of all, thenewflatrate.com. The is a part of it. Thenewflatrate.com. You go to thenewflatrate.com, and there's information there. If you want more information, you just click on the Get Demo button. We'll be happy to take you through a demo. We can also set you guys up with a link or something so we can even track those for you. But outside of that, we've got tons of videos and content on YouTube. So you can go on YouTube, check us out. Just look up The New Flat Rate. And then kind of another place for it would be, Facebook and Instagram. But in Facebook, we've got like an owners and managers chat board there that you can ask permission to join. And if you're an owner and manager, and normally that's our members, we've got a member one and we've got non-member ones. But ask to join if you're interested. We'll put you in contact with even other members and stuff. More than welcome to talk to them and see if it's right for you.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. We'll make sure to put all those those links in our show notes for after.
I wanted to ask about this event. It's an incredible opportunity for business owners to get together, connect with other business owners, pick their brains, learn from some of these amazing speakers that you have. For people who missed out on being here, why should they look at this event next year, and what is it that makes this one special?
That's a great question, Evan. And so Business Uncensored, it's called Uncensored because you go to so many different events and it's like they don't actually say what needs to be said. They just give you all these little teasers and just these sales things that say, hey, talk to me if you want more and buy my stuff and then I'll give you more. But they never actually give you the meat and potatoes. So we wanted to build an event that did two things. And one was deliver the meat and potatoes that contractors and service technicians really need to succeed. So that's the whole thing, is when we vet our speakers and stuff, we tell them you have to bring relative content or you will not come back. And that's the whole thing about it. But then another part of it is, for the new flat rate, kind of our goal and vision, our slogan, I guess you can say, is a little bit odd for what we are. And our slogan is that we keep families together. And people don't really realize that at first glance, because they think, hey, we just make more money. But the number one leading cause in divorce for business owners is that typically their relationship was broken apart because of money or time. Because there wasn't revenue, the company was struggling, so the stress was there, the pressure was there, or they just were always at work, so they never came home. And so the new flat rate helps businesses increase their revenue and profitability so that everybody can go home, so that you can enjoy the things in life that really matter. And so with Business Uncensored, we wanted to bring a place that not only helped them get there to do that, to make the money, to make the right choices, but that also brought them together with other business owners that had already solved those problems that they could communicate to and talk to. So a big piece of this event, it's a little weird, but when we have breaks here, we try to make them longer. And we typically have at least 30-minute breaks for all of our members to talk to each other, to actually enjoy those things.
Well, the amount of events that I've been to too, and like on a marketing agency side, the best conversations, the best things that you get aren't necessarily from something up on stage, unless it was my talk, of course. You want to that was here.
It was awesome.
Yeah, of course, I'm kidding. There's why I'm a plus minus on my humble. But it's the conversations you have between events. It's the conversations that you have after hours between business owners, because somebody's been there, done that. And if the other person is vulnerable and raw and real and authentic to be able to ask the question, the other person's going to help. It's so great, so powerful.
Thaddeus, I think that most people want to help.
Yes.
And I think that people that have succeeded, they want to share that with people that need it. You just got to ask. And what a perfect place to ask. I remember, and I don't know the names of everybody, but I remember one time there was this business guy that asked Michael Jordan to lunch. Did you ever hear about that? So he asked Michael Jordan to lunch as a business guy to buy him lunch and actually have a conversation with him, not thinking that he would say yes, because this guy was a nobody. And Michael actually said yes. And went to lunch with him, and they talked about business in ways that he could, do better. Because if you don't know, Michael Jordan is business brilliant. I mean, made hundreds of millions of dollars at it. But the big thing is the guy asked Michael at lunch. He said, "Why did you go to lunch with me?" And you know what Michael said? Because you asked. Yep. And the thing is how many of us don't talk to our peers, don't, go and ask the people in seats like mine or the other people at an event. We don't ask them questions that we really need help with just because we think that they won't talk to us.
Either that, or if it's a pride or an ego thing. I mean, I need help with Like that's the biggest, the toughest thing for some 99%, I mean, myself included, I need help with.
That's
But here's the thing is once you do it once and people help you, you're like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. And then you do it again and you do it again. You're like, oh shit, it's actually pretty easy. People want to help.
They do, and it's funny. I've got a list. People have lists of goals. I've got some goal lists, but I've got another list that's a goal list, and it's the top 10 people I want to take to lunch. So I've always liked it. And I was like, hey, I would love to take these people to lunch, and one person on that list, his name is Michael McCallowicz, the author of a book called Profit First.
Yep.
I actually flew to New Jersey about 2018. Flew to New Jersey and took him lunch. Kind of fun. I was actually able to check that off.
Yep.
But the thing is, if I never would have put his name on that list, never would have happened. Yep. I had to decide that, hey, that was worth the time. Yep. Kind of neat.
Yeah, I like his Clockwork was another one of his.
Yeah, it was funny.
He's got a lot of good books. Yeah.
Actually gave me his whole set and signed them all when I went.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
That's cool. That's cool.
He's a cool guy.
Jim Rohn talks about like that same idea of taking someone to lunch and being able to pick their brains. And he's like, get the appetizer, get drinks, and it doesn't have to be alcohol, but yeah, stretch it out. Yeah. Make sure there's dessert. Even if you don't eat it, it just extends the conversation another 45 minutes. Yep. And there's other little things that you can do too to try and make an impact on that meal. But one of the other things he talks about is don't just take out wealthy people.
Right.
Take out broke people. One, cheaper lunch. You don't need to impress them.
McDonald's.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But also taking the time to learn what not to do.
Yeah.
And what mistakes do I need to avoid? Why is it? I was in the elevator with someone here today and we were having a conversation about some of the people that are even at this event. And, they've got 2 trucks on the road. He's like, man, you had 2 trucks on the road 2 years ago. Like, what have you been doing? And, there are a lot of people that are in that place too. And it's important to learn those lessons. What are they doing to stay in that place? Right. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it isn't. And being able to learn those lessons of what not to do, what to avoid.
No, I think that's valuable. Can I share one other thing? Yeah. So people ask me all the time. They say, Matt, who's the most successful, company that you've ever worked with? And we've worked with a lot, thousands. And I've worked with like personally one-on-one with companies that were $50 and $100 million companies. And they always think I'm going to talk about one of them. But the funny thing is the member that I have, he's retired now, that I consider to be the most successful is actually a gentleman named Scott. And he was one of our early members that when we first started talking to him about his company, he was in a place kind of like you were just talking about, Evan, of desperation, where he had been trying to sell his business. He was burnt out. He didn't know how to grow it, didn't know how to get where it needed. He just wanted to sell it, and he wanted to move away and go, piddle as a handyman or something. And the thing is when we met him, we said, Scott, you've got to have the new flat rate. It will change your life. Come up here. I'll show you how to do it, and we'll get you going. So he agreed, and we helped him get started. Set him up, told him what to do, and I told him, call me in 2 weeks. And he called me in 2 weeks. He said, Matt, I love my job again. He says, I go to work every day. He says, I go into a customer's home, and he said, they write me a check for $1,000. And he said, and I just pull up my chair, and I sit and work on this thing until it's the way I want it. He says, I take parts off, I put them back on, I just work until it's beautiful. He's like, that's all I ever wanted. I just didn't know how to make enough money. And the thing is Scott got to the place where literally it was just him and his wife in the company. They would literally turn on their phones on Sunday afternoon, and they would start booking calls, and they would only book 3 calls a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And when they had booked up their week, they would turn off the phones, like literally turn them off. And if anybody canceled, they didn't even try to replace them. Yeah. And he worked 4 days a week. They traveled around, him and his wife, for 3 days a week. And then just a couple years in, he ended up not only being able to retire with money, ended up actually being able to sell off his business for a really nice payday. But when I look at him, the reason he's the most successful is not because he was 50 million and not because he wasn't, but because he got absolutely everything out of his company that he wanted. And that's kind of my hope for all service technicians, my hope for all business owners, is that they align themselves with companies and people that will help motivate them not to become something they don't want, but to actually get what they did want. And to me, that's the greatest thing and the most success is when I can run across a guy that says, man, thanks to the new flat rate, I got everything I wanted out of my company.
Wow. Well, and it transcends the business part of things. It's more about the personal self and the fulfillment. And it's not just, it's, people ask, what's your definition of success? Well, it's different for every person.
It is.
Yes.
It is. Not everybody is made out to be a billionaire, otherwise money wouldn't mean anything to anybody.
Right. Well, then that's why, I mean, shit, I said this in my talk. I say this all the time on our podcast. If you want to be like what Evan said, you're going to be a business with 2 trucks, then great, be a business with 2 trucks. If you want to be 10 trucks, be 10 trucks. If you want to be 20 trucks, be 20 trucks.
Just don't get stuck there.
Right? Just don't get stuck there. As long as you're enjoying and fulfilled with it, and you're having fun with what you do, then be there. Be happy doing it. Don't have this social media pipe dream that everybody's like, you got to be 50 million. Well, no, not everybody's cut out to be able to even do that.
They're not, but I think in the world of the 2 trucks, like Evan was talking about, there's just an awful lot of people that stay there because they don't know how to grow or change. But really, I think it's because of the fear of growth. They're afraid they'll fail, and so they're just they just shun everything. Well, it's I just can't find good help. Just can't find good help. Like there's 8 billion people on the planet. Somebody is good good enough to help you.
Well, and that fear of failure is such a real thing. I was reading a book on the plane ride down here that talked about one of the biggest reasons that businesses stay stuck, that a CEO, owner of the business stays stuck, is because of fear of failure. They don't want to move forward on an action. They don't want to move forward on an idea. They don't want to move forward in their business because they're scared of what happens if they fail.
Mm-hmm.
Flip the script. Well, what happens when you succeed?
For some guys, it's the fear of success.
Yeah.
Right? They're afraid of not being able to live up to that, and they have this imposter syndrome about themselves.
Oh shit!
Right?
Every day, imposter syndrome, right?
Either imposter syndrome or a family that they know will come take it all away from them.
If I make too much money, my wife's leaving me.
Yeah.
No, but I love that story about Scott because it reminded me of John Wooden, and famous basketball coach, won more championships than anyone else, including 4 undefeated seasons. And when asked, who was your favorite team that you ever coached? It wasn't any of those teams. It wasn't any of the NBA player teams that went on to have great careers in the NBA. And I was trying to look up the exact year, but it was one of his old teams before he even got to the UCLA, who barely scraped over 500. And he said it was because they reached their greatest potential. They were not full of the most talented players, but because they worked the hardest and they reached their full potential with that team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Well, Matt, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your guys' event to sit and chat with us, talk about the options. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, be sure to check out those links to be able to find Matt and the new flat rate for sure. But before
And get your ass to Business Uncensored next year.
next year. But before we finish up, is that still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But before we finish up, we still have one last question, though. Okay. And what is one question that you wish people would ask you more, but don't?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess the one that comes to mind, I'm going to have to get a better answer, but the one that comes to mind is probably what's next. And I have a few people that's their whole relationship with me, as they ask that. They're, in business, and they just, anytime they come up to me, they're like, "Hey, what are we doing next?" In other words, they're just kind of waiting. But at the end of the day, I think the answer to that question is that we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to have fun doing it. I look at life as a choice. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Oz Principle. It's just all about, that's all we have in choices in life is positive and negative choices. And one choice that I try to make every single day is the choice of happiness. I say, happiness is a choice. And so when we look at what's next, well, what's next is we're going to be happy, and we're going to win. That's the outcome. Could we lose along the way? Yeah. Have we ever? Yeah. It's like, people look at me a lot of times and they think that I'm this, I guess, successful, powerful guy. And I'm like, by the time, different story for a different time, but by the time I was 22, I lost more money than most average people have in their whole life. And, it was just gone. But the thing is not everybody gets that. It's not because I had a silver spoon anyway. I just, honestly, it's because I was freaking lucky. I just got lucky and I made it and lost it. But the thing is over that, I learned what it was like to have a lot, and I learned what it was like to have none. And the thing is, I also learned that there's sometimes absolutely nothing you can do about it to make either one of those happen.
Right.
Like sometimes it just happens, and sometimes the negative especially. So the thing is what's next? We're going to win more than we lose, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
I love that. Perfect. Well, it's a good way to end the show.
Yeah, great way to sum it up.
Yeah, well, thank you again for taking the time. And until next time.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of the show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.